Good day, Brigade. This is Bahbi coming at you with the episode you're probably expecting, given the past week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Dear God, way too long. Even we're talking years. Let's be real. We're talking years. Well, let's get to it. To start, we're going to be talking about gun rights, mass shootings, and all that. You can tell it's going to be a tough one. So please bear with us to the end here, because my God. Anyways, as we probably and definitely should know by this point, there was a mass shooting at Uvalde in which 19 children and a couple teachers died. I believe we said 17 last. That was a bit inaccurate. Regardless, it's a horrible tragedy nevertheless. Now, this is naturally inspired, like every other mass shooting in recent American history. Thousands of ideas flying around on what we can do about, stopping this horrible thing. My God. And, well, there's a lot of ideas, and then there are some assholes like DJ Trump and his dumbass fucking asshole of a father who basically want to demonize those with mental health and such and believing they should, quote, be locked up. If you had seen our post earlier this week on his whole thing, you will understand where we're coming from on this, but basically, they can go fuck off. People with mental health issues are not the problem here. It is a much more complicated problem. And believe it or not, you two assholes are probably at the heart of it. So, let's liven up things a little bit with a bit of a fact. Did you know that there was an incredibly raunchy and, quite frankly, fucked up libertine book that was being written by a man in France during the French Revolution that was never finished? I mean, thank God it wasn't finished, because my God, this book is horrid. It's just raunchy. It was by a man named Marquis de Sade, and it was called The 120 Days of Sodom. He had apparently finished the first chapter, but the rest of it was notes, and based on those notes, this was a pretty fucked up book. Let's just say it involves a lot of rape and some really grotesque, disgusting imagery. Anyways, on with the show. Alright, so let's get into the nitty-gritty, god-awful details. So, since Uvalde, there have actually been more shootings in public places throughout the United States. And even before then, too. I'm sure you've probably heard of Buffalo. Tulsa's one that happened recently. God damn it, Tulsa. And there are many others that have occurred just throughout. Not only that, but just in the past couple of years alone, my God, the numbers have been skyrocketing in a way that's just not okay. So, let's start with what we think is probably the most absurd response to this. And please keep in mind, we're going to say this disclaimer right now. We have nothing against religious beliefs or religion in general. We do believe you should probably think critically about your religion before claiming to subscribe to it and see whether or not you actually do believe in the things that are within it. That's neither here nor there, though. Anyways, one of the most bizarre and quite frankly, kind of disgusting remarks and ideas for dealing with the whole rise of mass shootings and popular discontent amongst the Americans within the American Union is prayer and a closer relationship with God. Now, don't get me wrong. Prayer and religion can help a lot with coping, and for many, it is a very helpful means to cope. In fact, in the American Union, it's so much a helpful coping mechanism that in just the past few years, religious fervor and faith in religion has gone up significantly. Like, it's actually at an all-time high now. And yes, this is great for dealing with tragedies and dealing with the tragedy of everyday life and all that. The problem is, there are people suggesting this as an actual solution to a very real problem. Look, don't get me wrong. Again, as we've said, a prayer in a closer relationship with God can definitely help with coping and all that. But it cannot possibly provide a real concrete solution to the result of a series of complex societal issues that have brought about incredible discontent, especially within lone mass shooters. Prayer isn't going to solve that problem. If someone wants to do this or feels they need to do this, they will do this. And as we said earlier, with religious fervor and faith in God being at an all-time high in the American Union, and the trend of mass shootings and public shootings and all that going up, if anything, it's not helping at all. Now we should keep in mind that this correlation does not mean causation. We're not saying that religious fervor and faith in God is actually increasing these. God, no. That is not at all what we're trying to say here. What we're saying is that if it were the answer and the greater devotion would help, then why is it the fact that the data is quite frankly showing the contrary? And this isn't just me saying this. This is data from multiple news sources on both sides of the political spectrum, such as Fox and CNN, that are showing that religious belief and devotion are in fact at an all-time high. This isn't like something we're pulling out of our ass here. This is a real thing. There is a slight bright spot, is that while we are high on the list of countries with the most mass shootings, number 2, by the way, if you were curious, it's been a very distant number 2. Do keep in mind, though, number 1 is number 1 for a very good reason. Number 1 is Yemen. Why is there a good reason for Yemen to probably be number 1? Probably that civil war they're currently in the midst of. That would do it. What we are number 1 in, and this is quite frankly really upsetting, and it's a very big number 1, is that when it comes to death by firearm through suicide or homicide or accidental death or anything like that, we are number 1 by a fucking long shot. There is nobody coming for that title anytime soon. And quite frankly, that's kind of appalling. Now you might be wondering, how in the hell is this happening when we have so many stringent gun laws? Well, believe it or not, they're not as stringent as you might think. And having organizations that have been for decades now trying to tear down these very things that, believe it or not, some of these organizations actually believed in at one point. Fun fact, before the LaPierre family and all that took over the NRA and such, the NRA was actually very much in favor of the idea of gun control. This only changed around the late 60s, early 70s when political climate shifted. Yeah. The NRA went from being all about gun control to, fuck gun control, we need all the guns in the world. Yeah. It's a bit of an about face when you think about it. So, what are some solutions here? Because we did mention that there are a ton of solutions and ideas being thrown out there. And quite frankly, some of them are actually quite good. So, first, let's talk about how many of them, aside from prayer, again, are really good ideas. And at some point, you're probably going to be wondering, wait, aren't we doing this already? And before you keep asking that question repeatedly, the answer is, some of this we've been doing sort of, others we have been actually going back on, and some still we just completely fucking ignore. So, number 1, and this is kind of going to go in a weird direction here, is mental health funding. Now, you know we're all about that mental health funding, and as we've said earlier in the show, fuck you, DJ, for thinking that mental health is the problem here. We will not lie, though. Adding funding and helping with actual mental health issues will go a long way in helping prevent things here. Because, as we've stated, mental health issues are not what's the enemy here. And not everyone who is a mass shooter is mentally ill. However, there is that issue, and it does hurt a lot. particularly when we go back to firearm deaths overall, and one in particular about suicide. So mental health funding is already pretty much non-existent in most states. In fact, the state of Colorado is seen as one of the worst states for mental health. Which is kind of saying something, because most states are really bad about mental health. It doesn't help that there is a massive stigma, particularly within the American Union, that being mentally ill or having mental health issues is equated to being crazy. Sorry if that offended. I'm not trying to offend here. In fact, I've been diagnosed with depression myself. But no. People with mental health issues are not crazy, and they're largely stigmatized, and they make a very good victim to blame and a scapegoat for when you want to explain a phenomenon that's occurring because of things you support. And this is why the mentally ill are almost always the first ones to get thrown under the bus. This is why people say, oh, I had a psychotic episode, or oh, my mental health wasn't in the best place, or all that. For some people, yes, this is a real thing. But when people start using this as an excuse and a scapegoat to explain things that can otherwise be explained by very real problems that that person themselves is actually doing consciously, you need to see yourself out of the fucking room. Yes, people with mental health issues do have a responsibility to try their damnedest to make sure that those mental health issues don't fucking screw people. But my God, if you've never had mental health issues, you would not know how hard of a fucking tightrope that is to fucking walk. It is insane. And some days, the best thing you can hope for is that you didn't totally fuck shit up. Because you just know you fucked something up. And even then, it mentally fucking hurts. Anyways, apologies for the language, but let's go to a more real, or go to more other solutions. By the way, before the Uvalde shooting, Governor Greg Abbott actually took about $20 million out of mental health funding for the state of Texas and reallocated it towards his whole little border fiasco, which, fun fact, also clogged up fucking supply chains even more. Because it's not a barrier to trade until I put my seal on it. So, what else can we do? Well, we can start allocating funding towards things like counseling, both crisis and non-crisis counseling, education, which is laughably abysmal in this nation state, as we've covered in a previous episode. Please check that out. Not shameless plug. Totally shameless plug. And revamping and reshaping training for such situations for law enforcement. Because the reports on the ground are that these police officers did in fact have active shooter training. If that's the case, what the fuck were they doing? What in the actual fuck were they doing? My God! If a soldier knew that there was some shit going down in a particular zone, they'd assess the situation and figure out how they can best deal with it. These police officers, when they saw that shit was going down, they assessed the situation, and assessed the situation, and assessed the situation, and assessed the situation. Oh, another one gone. Assess the situation. You get the point. They sat idly by when they should have been acting. And while in the United States, it is not the duty of the police to protect the populace or even preserve the populace like they should, which, by the way, makes the whole line protect and serve complete fucking bullshit. And yes, this is actually cited in the Supreme Court on multiple cases, that the police do not have to legally protect the public, except for like in very specific circumstances, and believe it or not, active shooter is not one of those circumstances. So no one's going to be facing any real criminal punishment or anything there for letting several people die. Sorry, this is going to be a very emotionally charged episode. We do have a script and we are actually trying to follow it as best as we can, but it's a bit of an emotional one for us. But in short, clearly the training they have is not good enough. That, or the people who were supposed to be doing this fucking job were too damn afraid to. In either way, this is not a group of people who are meant to protect and serve, and this gets really fucking scary. Because if they're not there to protect and serve the public, and they're not there to deal with that kind of crap, what are they there for? It seems like the only answer is oppression and making white people feel more comfortable. Which, as a white person, the police do not make me feel more comfortable. It might be something to deal with the fact that they shot and killed my grandmother. It might be due to the fact that I've been harassed by police as a child for an incredibly long amount of time, simply because I decided to be friends with someone who got picked on by a lot of assholes. Look, we're going to be honest. Our views of police and law enforcement are not positive. And this does not help. But we do understand that it's not always the fault of individuals. It is the fault of a system that is designed to do basically nothing but oppress and subjugate a populace. And this isn't the whole racial thing just going on its own. This is they've been proving this very clearly in the past few years, past few decades issue. That they are not interested in helping. So that actually leads us into our next thing. Reform law enforcement. Because as of current, reform for law enforcement and police is pretty much on everyone's mind, and for a damn good reason. Like we've just stated. It's blatantly clear that the current policing methods and means are, at best, outdated, and at worst, straight up oppressive. And this is not good. In fact, you'll usually have public schools in low-income areas with these things called school resource officers. What's a school resource officer? Well, in some jurisdictions, they're just a private citizen. In other jurisdictions, most jurisdictions, they're actually a goddamn law enforcement officer meant to be in the school at least once a week, once a day. It depends on the individual school district. But what do school resource officers do exactly? They're basically school security. They have three roles. For a lot of organizations of school resource officers have three roles. Law enforcement, engaging with students, and identifying threats. Now, the idea of engaging with students is actually not a horrible one, because you're trying to make it seem as though you're more friendly to the police, and you're trying to build that relation with the police and people. And I get that. But as we've stated previously, since it's not your job to protect, I don't think the people feel too safe or comfortable about that idea. Especially in low-income and minority-dominant schools, which exist in a lot of places, and have a lot of urban areas. And the school resource officers there, more often than not, like to hit hard on that law enforcement button as compared to the other two. So, yeah, you basically institutionalize racism within schools. Congratulations. That did a lot of good, didn't it? Now you make I'm not even gonna finish that word thought. God damn. Additionally, though, school resource officers under the employ of police and similar law enforcement need to be removed entirely. This is what we prefer. Or retrained so that the main priority is not arrest and enforcement of the law, but rather, doing things to engage with the community and, talk to students, get them to feel more comfortable with things around, and maybe help with issues at school. A job probably suited better for a goddamn counselor than a goddamn police officer. Why? So we don't have 5-year-olds getting charged with assault on an officer for having a temper tantrum. Or maybe having high school girls getting body slammed for an emotionally difficult day. And yes, these are things that have actually happened. We're not just citing random crazy-ass examples like we're Tucker Carlson. You can actually look these up. And they have happened. Additionally, you can also check out the most recent web exclusive of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which we did get some information from. Thank you very much. Because he goes into a much greater detail about school officers, school resource officers, and that particular aspect. Additionally, if you want to learn more about overall just law enforcement and stuff, and things that could be drastically changed to help them out, that aren't just straight up defund the police, check out Wyatt Cenac's Problem Areas, particularly the second season. He does a very great job. You know what, just check out Wyatt Cenac's Problem Areas, it's good. Anyways, as you can probably tell, we're definitely fans of the total removal decision. What's another thing we can do? Well, we can regulate firearms sales and put a ban on pawn shops and similar establishments from selling firearms. Yeah, so did you know that most firearms purchased for mass and public shootings, homicide, and suicide actually come from pawn shops and such? Why? Because they have little to no regulation and often buck the law in regards to background checks. Because good luck getting a background check completed at a pawn shop. You know, their whole business is kind of not asking those questions. And again, it's not like we're saying pawn shops are horrible things, though there are some people who say that. What we're saying is maybe a place that kind of prioritizes discretion and quick sale isn't the place to buy and sell weaponry. It just seems like a bad situation. And again, these owners of these pawn shops are free to do whatever they wish in terms of their business and when it comes to buying and selling. You know, to an extent. It's not like they can totally screw you or anything, but they can kind of screw you. Watch Pawn Stars. That'll explain to you how much pawn shops screw you. But yeah, there should be a straight up ban on pawn shops and similar establishments being able to sell weaponry and firearms. Additionally, we need to make sure we are following through on regulations and regularly doing that. And maybe even inspecting often to make sure that people are following through on regulations. But keep in mind, there are actually a lot of gun shops out there that are very responsible and actually do take this shit very seriously. In fact, most of them still follow the Brady Bill, which is good. Because, my God, 3-day waiting period, like it. So, this is going to be the real big one. And this is probably the one you have some suspicions on, ooh, is he going to say it? Or, ooh, what's going to happen here? Or, ooh, I think I know what's next. So what's next? Repeal the Second Amendment and place gun rights under the 10th Amendment. For those of you who don't know, the 10th Amendment is the amendment that states that the rights and privileges that are not written within the Constitution are left to the states to decide whether to keep or not. The Second Amendment is what gives the right to bear arms. So, you can see how this becomes a problem, because it means that gun rights is a national argument. It's a matter of all or nothing. Either we all get to have to deal with this, or none of us get the privilege of owning a firearm. And this is kind of why this becomes a challenge. Now you might be wondering, okay, a lot of people have suggested this whole repeal the Second Amendment thing. What makes this so special? Well, believe it or not, we actually got this idea from a rather unlikely source. Who, you might ask? Former Supreme Court Justice named John Paul Stevens, passed away in 2019, who identified as a conservative Republican and was and still holds the record for oldest sitting member of Supreme Court, or who was ever the oldest living Supreme Court justice in or out of tenure. So when it comes to talking and interpreting the law, this guy knows a thing or two. It should be important to note that during the end of his tenure, he did tend to side more on the liberal side of the court. Now, whether this is just a changing and shaping of his views over time, or rather he's always been held to maintain the same views and society shifted around him, is up for much speculation and fun debate. Actually, that sounds like a fun little shoot the shit thing afterward. However, this is where we got it. Now, why end the Second Amendment? And what would it do? Well, the end of the Second Amendment, in this case, would mean that the end of the right to bear arms would fall under a states' rights question, not a federal question of, is this something for everybody or just nobody? It makes it a question for the states to ask themselves. And this is where it actually starts to fit into our own personal philosophy. Because this gives the states the rights to determine whether or not they need or even want to have the right to bear arms. Now, for places like New York City and LA and states that feel they don't need states, cities, and parishes, counties. A parish is just basically a county in Louisiana, for those of you who may not know. And all that should have the right to determine these things on their own, because the circumstances and situations of each little region and area of the American Union is very different. And this is something that's going to seem a bit different from a lot of places that a lot of us might be familiar with. But a lot of the American Union is not major cities or big, shiny, bustling towns or anything like that. In fact, large swaths of it are big, wide empties. Someone who's lived in the interior for pretty much all his life, I can tell you. There are a lot of big, wide, open spaces that go on for miles. There's a reason they call it flyover country, which is actually quite sad. There's a lot of interesting history throughout the plains, and you really should take a tour there sometime if you can. But in these more rural areas, you're going to be encountering much bigger wildlife and having situations where personal responsibility and personal judgment become a much bigger and more necessary thing. There isn't as much of a cohesive, large, organized body helping run things and keeping the trains moving, so to speak. So, from there, we can give it to states, counties, parishes, towns, and cities to decide for themselves whether or not to allow the right to bear arms and to what extent that right should cover. Because right now, it's incredibly vague. And before we continue forward, yes, we're totally justified in asking for a repeal of the Second Amendment and any change of the Constitution, because the Founding Fathers made certain that the Constitution could be changed, for they knew it was not a perfect document, and there was no way in hell they could see 200 years in the future. And unlike a lot in the modern conservative movement, they recognized this. But it basically allows these more rural areas to keep the firearms they feel to be necessary. And in these rural areas, which are generally at lower risk for public and large-scale shootings anyway, due to lack of populace, would still be able to exercise the right that they hold so dear. In fact, you'll find that many people in support of these gun rights and such actually come from these more rural and less populated areas. Now, there are still very large population centers in places like the South, but the point is, there is an actual need to having a large caliber rifle, especially if you're a rancher in Montana having to deal with fucking bears eating your goddamn cows. Or say you have to deal with a wolf pack in the Mountain West, and you kinda need some sort of firearm to show that wolf pack, hey, this is a much more level playing field than you think. Because, as many urbanites like to think, but is not actually true, yes, nature is precious, but nature is also a psychotic bitch. And I don't mean this in a derogatory sense. I mean, like, nature, if it were personified, would probably actually be diagnosed as being psychotic. Would have a serious case of psychosis. Again, this is a personal opinion, but hey, let's talk about the weather, right? But a lot in the urban areas don't really register that because they never really have to experience it firsthand. At the same time, though, having such high caliber rifles or something like that in the city doesn't make any goddamn sense, because at that point, at absolute worst, you're going to need maybe a pistol. In that case, you only need deterrence because you're going to be dealing with fellow humans. And even so, it's totally within the rights of these cities and towns to say, hey, we don't want that kind of stuff here. Take it somewhere else. And quite frankly, disarmed cities would probably be a good thing. It would probably lead to less violence overall, less access to the means of creating incredible amounts of violence. And while unrest wouldn't necessarily go down, it would make this unrest a lot less potentially lethal. By the way, if you'd like to know some interesting facts about owning the right to bear arms and all that, in the state of Colorado, you could theoretically build up your own militia. Now you might be wondering, how the hell do you know this? Well, sometimes you get a little curious and you want to study some things. So under the state of Colorado, there are some things you can legally own that might not otherwise be justifiable in, say, like Kansas, Nebraska, or somewhere like that. In Colorado, you can own an active tank. Not a tank that's been deactivated or has had its gun removed or something like that, but a fully functioning active tank. Now you have to get licenses, permits, and permissions and all that, but you could buy a tank and own it. Why? Avalanche mitigation. You can also buy artillery guns for the exact same reason. I'm pretty sure rockets don't fall into this category, however, because their comparative avalanche destructive effectiveness to other means like a howitzer is a little could leave a little bit to be desired, since rockets have more splash effect than, say, a hard artillery shell. But the point stands is, you could totally build a small militia in the state of Colorado legally and with very few regulation. Fun fact, in the United States, in most places, you can actually buy, own, and build your own flamethrower, no questions asked. Why? Because flamethrowers can be used for all sorts of things. And they're regarded as a tool in that regard, not a weapon. Like, you can use a flamethrower for ice mitigation. That is a totally legally justifiable excuse to have a flamethrower. And you can use it for brush clearing and all sorts of other fun crap that doesn't involve harming another human being. But, just the same, you can totally justify basically having a small militia's worth of arms. And it's totally within your right as of current. So, maybe having the ability to regulate within smaller jurisdictions on terms of firearms and all that is something that should be allowed. It just seems like a good idea. So, in summation, the debate about firearms and the issue of mass shootings is one that is rife with emotion, passion, and has no easy answers, as we've clearly covered. Using prayer, given the current level of religious fervor compared to the instances of mass shootings, to combat the issue, is essentially akin to doing nothing, and at best is your respective God telling you that this is a problem that we'll have to deal with on our own. This isn't to say that prayer can't help with coping, just that it clearly isn't helping prevent mass shootings. In other words, Jesus helps others who help themselves. Schools are not and should not be battlefields, so stop trying to arm teachers and overtures to turn schools into fortresses, both things that have been presented as ideas in recent times, which are, quite frankly, ridiculous, especially when many of these teachers don't want to have a gun on them and don't feel the need to have a gun on them. But schools should be used to foster learning and growth, not fear and the possibility of criminal prosecution for an emotionally rough day. Now, there are many great proposals for things to do that help the current situation. And we'll admit right now, even some Republicans have called for good ideas, like funding mental health programs. Believe it or not, that was actually a Republican idea this time around. Now, if they just stop gutting the mental health programs the minute they get money, that would be great. And yes, they do that. As we stated earlier, Governor Greg Abbott, like just weeks before the whole Uvalde thing, literally diverted $20 million in funding for mental health institutions and programs to do a whole fucking border check, which found 0 fucking illegal immigrants. One thing is clear, though. It's that we all want this to end. No one solution will be the end-all solution, but any solution put forth that isn't an already dismissed, incredibly stupid one should be considered. This is a situation where many of us aren't certain what to do. And it's a very rough and confusing time, especially for those of us who have children who might be in schools, because this will make you scared. This would be scary as shit, having your child go to a school, and on any given day you might have to end up with seeing that school on the news because someone decided to fucking shoot the place. And there are a lot of complex reasons why these people do the things they do. And this is all the part of the reason why we gotta go back to the whole mental health warnings and go back to figuring out what we can do about red flag detection and going back to understanding what we can to help this. Not treating mental health like it's a stigma and a disease that produces, quote, evil people. People aren't evil. The actions they undertake can have a good or evil implication based on our own interpretation. Now, an individual might have their own inherent moral beliefs and shit, and that's fine. That's just a part of the human experience. But to stigmatize and marginalize an entire group of people as being, quote, evil because of the actions of a few poor assholes is horrible. And I think the Trump family should fucking know this. You know, since they're the ones always crying and bitching about how people do it to them every time, but they clearly don't care about doing it to other people. Anywho, that's our show. We're going to be taking a mid-season break here for a few weeks, and we're going to be coming back August 3rd, but before that, we're going to have a July 4th special for you, because, you know, Independence Day and being a politically charged channel, we feel like we should at least do something for that. No, we're not obligated, but it seems like something nice we could do. Anyways, like us, hate us. If you like what we had to say, great. If you hated what we had to say, that's okay. Regardless, share us. Because this is how ideas spread. Is when people share these new thoughts and ideas, and even retread over old ideas and thoughts, and maybe take a look at them and see, hey, would this work in this situation? And we implore you, please take a look at any of these ideas, and if you like them or hate them or feel like they can be altered to be even better, great. This is how we move things forward. Ideas don't belong to any one individual. They belong to us all. And that's it for us now. That's our show. Thank you. Please do share us if you like us or even if you hate us. Every share helps. And those who wish not to be tread on should mind where they step. Good night, and have a pleasant tomorrow.